You're watching a TGM production. Welcome to Tom Mason Interviews, the show where I interview people over video conferencing. This week I'm interviewing Katherine Boyle. Hello and welcome back to Tom Mason the Interview. Yes, I remembered what series they're on. I just looked at my hair and I thought, when did I have a quiff? Well, apparently I must have had that the entire time. But we're here. Welcome. Now, for anyone that's not been paying attention, why not? I am on Patreon. I thought I would never mention it, but I said this morning on a video elsewhere that I would mention it, so I've off my mouth and started to speak. Now, on the Patreon, you can see all sorts because it's like a TV channel, if you will. So the Creative Zone is the TV channel, like the BBC or ITV or whatever, right? And the and the stuff on it are the TV shows. You can spend £1, £5, or £10, or as the British Comedy Guide like to call that, a pay what you want, even though you can't pay what you want because you might not want to pay £1, you might want to pay 99p and you can't do that. So it technically isn't what you want, but that's it. But there'll be stuff on that and you'll find that elsewhere. But that's that whilst I'm thinking of other words there that I should say. But we shall crack on. But we will have more interviews in the pipeline, which is not a pipe or a line, and we shall crack on. My guest today is best known as Linda Pollock on the many Guns Baptiste podcasts. Just searching the word Guns Baptiste, and one of them will appear. There might be three because one's a Patreon exclusive. You ignore that unless you're on the Patreon because it's another one. But it's the one and only Katherine
Whoop, whoop,
Boyle.
whoop, whoop, whoop. It's an alarm.
Yeah. Um. And so we shall start at what
Mhm.
I believe is the very beginning, because
Mhm.
Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start. And so far, in the many years I've been doing this, she's not been wrong, but there is still time. Uh, how did you get into the world I like to call the media of industry?
Oh, you're a bit weird, aren't you? Why are you calling it that? How did I get into the media industry? By total accident. Trained as a journalist because my dad said get a proper job. And then he said, don't be a journalist. There's no money in it. He knew because he was a newspaper journalist. So I said, I'm doing it anyway, but I'll go radio telly. So I did a bit of radio and telly, mostly radio. And from there, I just sort of drifted from the news stuff into more chatty things.
Yeah,
And my first show I was given, it was a gardening show. I didn't have a garden.
yeah.
I'd never done a show before. What could possibly go wrong?
Awkward. Yeah,
But what I discovered with that was that it wasn't really about the gardening show. You know, like Top Gear wasn't really about motoring, and
yeah,
like Clarkson's
yeah,
Farm isn't really about that.
yeah,
It's about getting the right people on and having a bit of a laugh while you're teaching people things
yeah,
kind of stealthily.
yeah.
So that's kind of the trajectory I ended up sticking with, really.
Yeah. It's like that ITV Noel Edmonds things wasn't about New Zealand. It's really about Noel Edmonds. Um,
Yeah.
he's an odd fella. I think he knows that by the whole. I think it was like crystal sauna room that he has in on his farm.
Yeah,
Um,
I think he's gone the whole hog at this point, hasn't he?
yeah. Uh, but it is one of those things where when you watch TV, so it's for example, a good example I think is if you watch Mortimer and Whitehouse Gone Fishing. For me, well, I don't know anything about fishing and couldn't care less about the fishing
No?
aspect. I care about Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where if you get given a job like that, you need to ignore the main concept because someone else will probably have that covered, and it's
Also,
all about who you are.
also, yeah. And when you're used to doing the serious stuff, actually, when you work out that just knocking about with your mates can
Yeah,
pay, why on
yeah,
earth would you want to go back to the serious stuff again, right?
yeah, yeah. I'd rather be in the UK doing funny things rather than being in a war zone trying to dodge a bullet.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I value safety over seriousness, um, which not everyone values. I mean, filming Mastermind's probably not as safe as being in a war zone. Because someone might get angry because they might have thought they'd won and someone might have cheated. But as that was an odd note, we shall swiftly, very swiftly move on. Now, one of the things that you've currently been doing for X amount of years, you'll probably know more than me about how many years, but where did Linda Pollock begin? Where was the journey of you joining the Phoenix Knights universe, as I'm now calling it?
It's a very weird but beautiful coincidence that so I used to work on a radio show. I was a producer on a radio show, producer and co-presenter
Yeah.
with Ian Lee, and Ian Lee's been friends with Alex Lowe, aka Clinton Baptiste, for a number of years, and they've collaborated on a load of stuff. You may remember the famous Minty Biscuit call with Barry from Watford. Some people still believe that's real. Um, and also we had there was like a tech expert that used to ring up now and again and suggest that people should do a wet reset on their computers by dousing them in water. Again, cute angry phone calls from people saying, "You can't do that." No, of course you can't do that. And we also had a UFO expert who had some pretty freaky ideas about where human life came from. So I'd worked with them kind of as the three of us for a long time. And then once Ian and I weren't on radio anymore, we still do a Patreon show for the hardcore who know the score. But I kind of was ready to take a step back from radio and maybe just like try and get a proper job
Yeah.
finally,
Yeah.
which I did, but I'm still doing the silly ones on the side. So then Alex said to me, "Do you know anyone who might be able to do this for me?" And that apparently is showbiz code for "Would you like to do this for me?"
Yeah.
But in the past, I've always gone, "Oh, I don't know, let me have a think about it." So I jumped on it, and I'm not sorry I did because it's been an interesting ride for the last 5 years. I've retrained as a teacher. I've been doing a lot of very kind of normal, everyday, grown-up things,
Yeah.
and having every now and again, sort of every 2 weeks, being able to go and sit in Clinton Baptiste's studio and talk
Yeah.
absolute balls is really quite helpful,
Yeah.
for mental health wise.
Yeah, and because of the fact that Clinton has skyrocketed from where Phoenix Nice was,
Yeah.
and because I mean Peter Kay said it millions of times, that he's written a script for a film and he's waiting for de-aging technology to be really good. I don't know how young he wants to look, but it must there must be something. It must like in 30 years time he wants to look more like a 12-year-old
Well,
than
Peter
whatever
Kay
age he
is
looks.
getting younger all the time. It's uncanny, the transformation.
Yeah, yeah. And so if in the I don't know what the script is, so I'm not saying this is truth, but if Clinton then joined the film, Clinton within the film, would you, as being Clinton's podcast psychic and being a very well-known member of the universe, would you go into the film or would you stand back and go, I'm not, that's not for me?
I have learned better than to say no to anything, but I doubt very much that Linda would be part of that world. There's quite enough characters in there without her sticking a neck in.
Just
Telling
imagine
me
her
it's
as a
all
cameo.
gold.
You just imagine her as a cameo popping up going, hello.
Don't think it's ever going to happen, but I wouldn't say no. Put it that way, Tom.
Because I just think that if you merge everything that's occurred in how many years Clinton Baptiste's podcast has been a thing and all
Yeah,
the radio characters, if you merge them into Phoenix Night, I just think that would be just chaos. It's like Ruth being in the Phoenix Club
yeah.
would just be A, terrifying, and B, it would just be hilarious.
Ruth being out of the house is terrifying and hilarious. So yeah, putting her in a confined space.
Yeah, yeah. Her and Brian Potter would be like an evil mastermind. It's like Megamind in whatever film that was, where he's got that little fish friend in a bubble.
I believe the film was Megamind, wasn't it?
I don't know. I mean, there was a TV show called Megamind with Adam Lambert singing the theme tune, but I don't know what the I don't know what the film. I mean, I should pick references where I know the actual name of the thing I'm trying to reference.
It's
I sh
tricky. It never stopped us from doing it on the radio. Just keep blustering on through.
yeah, I should write these things down. But I do that all the time. I try and say something, then realize I don't know what it is, and then spend 20 minutes trying to work out what it is. But but when you're playing Linda, how
Yeah.
far away is Linda from you normally? Are you just basically just being yourself, just change your name, or are you a completely separate entity?
Well, Linda's got a few little plot points where she's got Emilio, and as far as we know, has not got any children. She's just got cats. I have got cats, and I do work in a school, but I'm not in charge of paper clips. So there are definite crossovers, Tom.
Yeah,
She's closer to me than I'd like. She certainly thinks it's a load of balls, and so do I.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I just one thing what makes the podcast interesting is that when you because me and my dad very not that long ago was listening from the very beginning, you could
mhm.
tell that at the very beginning it was all spooky. This is very paranormal. That by the end of it, you can sort of not tell where the paranormal is anymore. Do you think you noticed that from when you joined that it started to be less
I
spooky and more just here's a couple of gags, let's try and get as many in as possible.
Possibly, but for the most part, it without giving away too much of the magic. I don't know what he's going to say next, so so there isn't a plan in my head. He's got
Yeah,
it very carefully planned out, but there isn't a plan in my head, and it just goes where it goes. And I think actually what happens in a lot of partnerships, and what certainly happened with ours is you start out being really careful, and I was
yeah,
aware that this is his baby, and I've got to be respectful, and he's the star, and I was following his lead a lot.
yeah,
Whereas now we're sort of more comfortable with each other as friends, and we've worked out where those boundaries are, and with any sort of twosome working together, especially
yeah,
when you're doing a lot of improvised stuff,
yeah,
you've got to start being able to sort of read each other's minds, and also the other thing is giving up the funny.
yeah,
Sometimes you've got a line in your head, but you don't go there because you're like,
yeah,
let him have it, and then
yeah.
let her have it, and it's like a little game of, I wouldn't say chess because it's not as cerebral as that, but it's like a little game of tennis or swing ball,
Yeah,
basically, in that sometimes you let him have it because actually that was beautiful.
yeah.
Leave it there.
And I think swing ball is the best analogy because not
Because
many
there's balls involved.
yeah, yeah, and it's less tennis.
Yes.
Um there's a lot of tennis. And
Yeah.
I mean too much tennis in my opinion. But from a point of view where you were behind the let's say I'm not gonna say camera, I'm gonna say behind the microphone,
Mhm.
uh or as in a technical term, behind the pop shield.
Yeah.
Because technically, if you're in front of the microphone, it probably would not sound great. You have to have one
Yeah.
of those little covery thingies on them.
Yeah.
What a poor joke.
That's an excellent technical explanation there, Tom. I'm sure
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
appreciated it.
Do you sort of, when you're doing the show, do you sort of have two mind thinking about it? Was how do I make this funny, and at the same time, how do I make sure that it's still good, still good audio, if you will, to make sure that it's the best show because you've got two sort of expertise going on at once.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I think because I worked in radio for such a long time as a producer, I kind of know how things should sound. And when something gets in a rhythm, I don't get in the way of it.
Yeah,
That kind of thing, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Obviously sounds very poncy, but if you know, you know. But actually, for the most part, it's about forgetting that anyone else is there. And I think the best broadcasters are the ones that just talk to one person because you are just talking to one person.
yeah,
You normally, someone's listening in the car, someone's listening in their headphones. And so if it feels like it's you, me, and him, then
mm,
we've won. So I try not to think about it being a big show. And so
yeah,
I've been on stage before with Clinton, and that I always find a little bit, for me, he's great at it because
yeah,
it's his second home. But for me, that kills the magic a bit because I like it being just Clinton and Linda
yeah.
and just being about them rather than, and how's this going to look to other people, and being aware of what it looks like to other people, and how it may come across in the different permutations. And as soon as that gets in my head, I feel like it stifles me a bit.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about the staging. There's in the original podcast, there was a lot of shows at the 100 Club,
Yeah,
which I didn't realize was very close. I don't know much about London. I don't know much about a lot of things, but
it's right near the shops.
yeah. Well, I've only ever been to I don't know why I'm gesturing like that, but I've only been to that
This
area.
area.
Yes, this area. That
You haven't been there?
yeah, the area of the theatre
Mhm.
areas once because I went to the comedy store
Oh
not that
yeah.
long ago and so I didn't realize the 100 Club was that close into that perimeter until we're walking around and my father says, "Oh, there's a 100 Club," and
Yeah, it's
we
in the dazzling West End.
yeah Yeah, very very shiny. I mean, I don't know how anyone sleeps in that area because of all the lights. But when you're on stage and you have to go and ask the audience for spooky stories, and
Yeah,
you get the rowdy ones, or the
hopefully.
or you get the beef eaters, which is still, as my father says, one of the greatest things he's ever heard. Um, the beef, but when that occurs, do you sort of panic because you're not too sure what to do because they're saying what they're saying, so you don't know what they're gonna say. You're not too sure what Alex is gonna say is Clinton, but then you have to work out what you're gonna do to react to all of that at the same time. Is that harder for
No.
you because you're not used to that environment?
I think if that was in my head, it would drive me insane. No, I think that actually this is where working in radio and doing we did a late night phone in that was completely unscripted, and we
Yeah,
took phone calls straight to air. Now, thank God, on talk radio there is a 7 or 14 second delay. You can have a
yeah,
double dump, make your own jokes here. But so there was always that slight safety net,
yeah,
and you can normally tell, I think after years of working in radio as a producer, I started out as the one answering the phone, and you kind of get a vibe from
yeah,
the initial conversation. You can tell when someone's dusting their hands down and taking a run up ready to do a gag, right?
yeah,
On the phone. So we got quite good at that. Ian and I have got a kind of like I say, this sort of way of being able to read each other without saying anything. And we would generally know what was coming. And I think that same thing applies to doing things like with Clinton. So
yeah,
I've only done it a couple of times, might have only been once. But that I'm most comfortable with that because, you've got to remember I started out as a reporter.
yeah,
So I'm interested in people. I like being able to make them shine, give
yeah.
them a voice. And I like the uncertainty of what's going to happen
Yeah.
next. I actually get a buzz out of it.
Yeah, and because you've worked in, as you said, both radio and then
Yeah.
podcasting, which is technically radio but just over the internet. Some podcasts get shoved on the radio, and some
Mhm.
radio shows get turned into podcasts, which really annoy me because they're not actually a podcast; they're a radio program. It's like the
Well, and
art.
now it's visual as well, so you've got to
Yeah,
be eye-catching and zippy and do all those things.
yeah. I just want the Archers to be visual. I've seen what the Archers set looks like. That's the only podcast slash radio program that I wouldn't want to be visual because of Ruth Jones went, and this is a sidetrack, but the question is relevant. The thing's relevant. But Ruth Jones went in to do a set 'cause she's a massive fan of the Archers, right? Which tracks. And she sat in one of the beds, and the woman that showed her around said, "That's a community bed. That's what everyone uses because it's the same set." And so you can just imagine years and years and years of listening to Archers, and you could just pick out all the moments going, "I'm so glad it's not visual at this point."
I also think that part of the magic is that you can't see. So I
Yeah.
love radio, and I know that we're moving ever towards sort of visualizing
Yeah.
podcasts and visual. But actually, I think what they're going to start doing now is taking back and just using the visuals as clips to get people in
Yeah,
to listen to the actual thing. Because
yeah,
I think that people like to listen to podcasts on the move, and you're not going to be
yeah,
glued to your phone. Um, sorry, boring radio geek a moment there. But I really think that part of the magic of it is being able to be wherever you want to be. With the Archers, they're down the bottom of the field and
yeah,
coming, heavy breathing with milk churns and all that kind of. There's a lot of heavy breathing in the Archers. Once you've
yeah,
noticed it, you can't unnotice it.
yeah,
If they're busy, it's like, oh, come on, oh, help me with this. Oh, it's
yeah,
all got asthma. But if you saw it, it might seem a bit OTT, but they're using their voices in a way that you don't use. They wouldn't use it on EastEnders, for
yeah,
example. It would
yeah,
be so I think that there is a definite skill and a definite magic to just audio
yeah,
only, and I would hate for that to disappear. Also, the Foley artist who's making it
uh,
sound like they're punching someone's face in when really they're cracking a cabbage.
yeah,
It's a beautiful, beautiful tradition that I hope will never go anywhere.
yeah. And it's one of those things is when you see it in film, when you see Foley artists in a film, it always makes you wonder why could they not actually have the actual sound? It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, but when you really shake that tree, it doesn't actually sound like that. Well, why are you trying to make it sound like that if it doesn't actually sound like it?
Yeah, it's true. I went to LA recently on a school trip because I go to that kind
Yeah,
of school, right?
yeah, yeah.
And we went to the Foley artist studio. I think it was at Sony.
Mm,
And it's like a big dump room, right?
yeah,
Imagine someone's brain
yeah,
who's an audio geek, right? So there's like bits of paper over here, there's cowbells there, and on the
yeah,
floor there's different kinds of I mean, it sounds obvious, really.
yeah,
Different kind of flooring substances. There's a big
yeah,
grate they can pull across when Batman's coming out the sewer. There's a
yeah,
sand pit, in the desert. And there was an array of different kind of shoes. Like it's like this guy must be about sizing. size 11, size 12 feet. That's a pair of size 11 high heels for when he's being the lady walking down the pavement. And
Wow.
it's like it's magic, and you just think, God, without that. Oh, I also know how Spider-Man does the web noise.
Oh.
It's just, like videotape pulled out.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Who thought? So who thought? That's why you can't buy VHSs anymore.
because
Some
there's one bloke in Hollywood who sits there going, I know how I'm going to do that.
yeah, yeah, I'll buy them all. It's just got reams and reams and reams of how you're being served. And just
Yes.
it's just him and Hyacinth Bouquet and keeping up appearances.
Yeah.
What's Spider-Man? Oh yes, it's one foot in the grave.
I
It's
don't
this
believe
Victor Meldrew several times.
it.
Um, I could just imagine that. That is definitely. But in this is really offside, but we'll get back to my point eventually. But in Salford Uni, right, which is in the heart of Media City,
Yes,
their
by the way,
phone,
I'm from Salford, so I know
yeah,
it well.
well, their Foley room, and I've seen clips of them, so I knew what a Foley room would look like. Because someone said, "Do you want to come and have a look at one?" And I went, "Yeah." So I wandered in. They opened up a cupboard. It's literally like a cupboard that
Hmm.
that looks like the floor's been poked holes in. So
Yep.
just different holes, and it's like you just see all these videos online of these massive rooms, and then it's just one square going. You can't fit more than one person in there. I just assume they'll fall into the holes every time they're walking, trying to make a sound of sand, and it's just them going
Yeah. I
on the
wonder
recording.
whether that's because they've got loads of digital sounds now in their archive. They don't need to be making them fresh every time. Well, what a shame.
What a shit. But the point I was trying to get to was the fact that when you when you have the difference between radio and podcast, have you noticed how since you've worked on a podcast, have you noticed how radio has sort of tried to shift itself to more of a podcast type of atmosphere rather than what radio was where you've always got the posh person doing whatever. It's now just your average Joe can make a podcast, but it sounds a lot like it would do if it was on
Well,
radio. Da da da.
Well, yeah, and without wanting to sound very bitter, there's a lot of podcasts now by people who've been on telly, like in their bikinis and things.
Yeah.
Fair play to them. But I don't think being on telly on a reality TV show necessarily
Yeah.
makes a broadcaster and
Mm,
makes someone that you want to spend half an hour
yeah.
every week with. So, fair play. There's a lot of podcasts now. People are going to have to up their games. And I know that just generally in the industry now, it's about how many followers you've got. And I do think that is a bit of a shame
Yeah.
because where's the next generation of broadcasters coming from?
Yeah.
Where is Terry Wogan going to come from? Because I can't imagine El Tel, there in Casa Amor, and quite rightly so.
Yeah.
And also, you don't want everyone to be gorgeous, specimens. You want people
Yeah.
to have lived real lives and have voices from different parts of the community and
Yeah.
stuff. So I feel like we're in a kind of experimental phase at the moment, and perhaps we'll start honing down to the things that really work. Let's look at the things that really work now. The rest is politics because
Yeah.
people are interested in that. You got one quite posh bloke, one experienced bloke who's, historically prone to temper tantrums on different sides of political
Yeah.
divide. And it's that thing again, isn't it? It's the gone fishing thing. Their
Yeah.
big thing is disagree agreeably.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes down to, and what it will always come down to is those relationships.
Yeah.
Um, so, you can be as vibey as you like, as of the time as you like, but if it doesn't work, it's going to be obvious on a podcast because all you've got is your ears, your eyes and ears.
Yeah, and it's an awful joke, but the where Terry Wogan, you mentioned Terry Wogan. Well, there's a it's an awful joke, but there's a bloke that does live shows as Terry Wogan.
Oh my God,
And
really?
he dresses up, but you know it's a caricature of Terry Wogan because everyone he's interviewing, it's like different well-known comedians dressed up as different people that Terry Wogan would have had interviewed.
I
So
think I
it's
need to see that. I need to look it up.
So it's like such a it's like let's say Betty Davis. It's like could be like a really well-known female comedian everyone knows if
Yeah.
you know the circuit, but she just dressed up as Betty Davis answering questions as pretending to be Betty Davis whilst there's a bloke doing a really I don't know if he is Irish because I've not looked that further sat on a throne and he's like Terry Wogan live and you can buy he's been doing it for years you can buy DVDs of this bloke doing Terry Wogan
That's
live and he's
crazy. I've got to look that up. Tom, I've got to ask you because I
yeah.
work with teenagers and a lot of them won't know who Terry Wogan is.
Yeah.
You're obviously quite geeky about this
I,
stuff.
I am what I like to call an 80-year-old at heart, and very young looking. And so I am one of those people where you sort of have a conversation with someone and that they have no idea what I'm on about.
Yeah.
So I was in a classroom. I sort of regret asking this, but I was in a classroom once where the teacher assistant, that's quite older than me, was really into like Midsummer Murders and Vera. I'm like, I don't like all that, and it like, really freaked me out. It's like, I'm supposed to be young, and I just know too much. But
You're
yeah,
like a Victoria Wood character, Tom, in the
well,
best possible way.
yeah, yeah. I'm Duncan Preston, um, but very small. I'm a smaller version of Duncan Preston. But I do think that it's interesting. So it's like people like Terry Wogan. Not a lot of young, as you said, not a lot of young people would know who he is. But I think if you and we never learnt this in radio, which is a little bit
Mhm.
weird. But that's not anyone's. Well, I don't know whose fault it is, but it is probably someone's fault. But you don't learn about who was a good broadcaster before.
Yeah.
So when we were, because I did radio and no, I did television and radio production at uni,
Yeah.
and in the introduction radio course, because at the beginning you do radio, you never you were never told, even though I knew a lot about it, and I was the smart one that knew things that Timmy back behind me wouldn't have known, due to the fact that I've got too much free time on my hands. That's the difference. I'm not out drinking, partying, and whatnot. But you don't learn about like Terry Wogan and you don't learn about Kim Bruce and all what they were doing, but you do learn about like some of the odder aspects. So I don't remember what it was, but they did play a clip of Ian Lee because
What's a weirdo?
well, the teacher was that type of person that if you really think about it, would have been either one of the people that would have imitated Ian Lee,
Hmm.
or would have been Ian Lee if Ian Lee wasn't Ian Lee.
Right.
So he's got that sort of like attitude because he used to do prison radio, which I thought was well, I just thought that was a little bit odd.
I think
'Cause,
I might have met that teacher.
yeah, I can't remember his name at the top of my head right now, but
But
yeah.
the prison radio thing tracks with someone I remember. Yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
and it's one of those things that you find it's fascinating. Do you notice that because radio and the genre that it is, music, mainly mean music radio rather than what I like to call hilarious and posh Radio 4. Or
You think it's hilarious?
yeah, yeah. Well, to be fair, most comedies on Radio 4. So, but there's a woman hour parody, and that's off track. But do you think do you think I'm very good at going off track? But do you think you notice that radio is popular still because it's can be in so many different places? So you could be in a hospital and listen to hospital radio, or you could be in prison for horrific crimes and still enjoy the music of ABBA.
Yes. They should use that as the new slogan.
Yeah,
They're doing that Ramesh Ranganathan song. They could have spared some money and got you in.
yeah,
Yeah, but I do think that radio, I miss personalities on
yeah,
radio. And I feel like a lot of the people who are great on radio just aren't allowed to be as free as they would have been in the past because of, great errors that were made by
yeah,
other people
yeah,
previously. And I think there was a great kind of drive to make it safe and have people on who were a safe pair of
yeah,
hands. I've been at radio stations where I know that the DJ was given 15 seconds to get from song to
yeah,
song, and they weren't even allowed. The first radio station I worked at, the DJ was told not even to say if they liked the song. So they didn't alienate the people that didn't
yeah,
like the song.
yeah,
Now you get to a point where what's the point in listening to that when you can listen to Spotify and cut
yeah,
out the not even banal, not even allowed to be banal,
yeah,
someone telling you this is Justin Bieber again. What so
yeah,
I really feel like personality radio is something that will endure
yeah,
because at the moment it's kind of it's a bit of a dying art. We went quite far towards the let's get this person on to argue with that person
yeah,
about something because it will get the phones ringing. But we've heard that phone call 50 million times over
yeah,
the send them back, burst the boats phone calls.
yeah,
Actually, does it move things on? No. Is it representative? No, because who's going to ring up the person who's dead sure of themselves,
yeah,
right? And that's someone who's not necessarily prone to having a reasonable conversation. And when I
Yeah,
say reasonable, meaning like they'll listen to you and go, "Oh, do you know what? I hadn't thought about that."
yeah, and
Um, sorry, that
yeah,
was a tirade. But what I'm
yeah,
saying is, I really miss someone coming on the radio, and I knew who they was, and I knew who they were as a person, and
yeah.
knew what their point of view was, and that I was going to be in good company for a couple of hours.
Yeah, and you mentioned personalities, and I do think that, and they've now since I don't know if they've left yet, but they're in the process of leaving. I do think if you think of personalities in the radio, I think Lisa Tarbuck was very much what you describe as a personality because Scott Bryant, who's a very amazing TV critic,
Yeah.
he somehow spent. I don't know how long he did it, but he spent ages. I think it was him. He made a compilation of all the different odd noises that the guitar book has made in a entire time. And it's just every so often you just hear the start of the song and then she just starts yelling. But it's not
She
like
used to she used to make me laugh my head off. I remember her once having a squeaky toy. She was winding all the dogs up that were listening. I also
yeah.
remember her some song broke into a very protracted drum solo, and halfway through she went, "Stop it!" But you have to be pretty. You have to be a big TV star
Yeah.
in a kind of Lisa Talbot, Graham Norton, Chris Evans kind
Yeah.
of way to be able to do things like that these
Yeah.
days. You get so told off for that if you were just Joe Schmo, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and before we do move on, I at my college did college radio, and at that point, I didn't really know anyone else that was doing the station. So, and when I had heard, didn't seem like anyone else was doing it, and so this bloke was like ex radio, and he knew his thing, and I never done it before. So I come in to have a go, and he's like, oh, it's your first show, and so he let me do whatever I wanted. So by the end of it. I had music in it of songs I'd never heard of before I found out I could just say, "Oh, could you add that to the song list?" And I ended up having a sitcom in the middle of it. So every so often it was a new version of a sitcom that I recorded at home, so
Uh-huh.
that I knew, 'cause then I knew what the characters were. And it was always about the well-known characters were trapped in like a Chinese restaurant, trapped in wherever, and they had to bring someone else in. So when it cut back to me, I was doing another random voice.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
I would stand up and shut the actual door, and the boy was just sat outside staring at me every so often, going, "What's he doing?" And then when I said, "Oh, can I have some jingles?" He went, "We've never had jingles before," and it was me just doing it. And I found out that the radio station was blasting in the toilets. So my catchphrase was, "You can hear us in the toilets," and I was in lesson, and someone had nipped to the loo. But they must repeat these things, and so
Yeah,
he came out and toilet and went, "I've just heard you on the radio," and I thought. Yeah, is that really is this me going, "Oh, I'm trapped in a toy. Oh, I'm trapped in. Oh, I can't go out there. Oh, you're gonna have to ring Tom up." And it showcases that even if on national broadcasts there's not as many people faffing around like I was, it still showcases that there is still places where you can do whatever you want. So in
yeah,
university radio, they didn't scream what I was doing, and they let me do a sketch show which was all improvised, where I pretended I was a baby hijacking a plane going wee wee wee. And so they just let it happen. I recorded that at 6 in the morning. Everyone in this house thought I was on it a bit, but
yeah.
um, but they just let it happen. They just
It's
let it
great.
happen because why not? And do you think that that's what's good about student radio is that
Yeah,
that's
because
probably a new place to train?
yeah, exactly. And it's that thing of making all your mistakes or making all your experiments,
Yeah,
doing it when you're in a safe environment where you're not probably not going to get sued.
yeah,
If you do step over the line too much, you'll get a conversation that hopefully will teach you something.
yeah,
But you get to play around like that, and I love that you did that. I was lucky enough to work on a local radio station where we could make up sketches and things,
yeah,
and the thing about the BBC then, I mean, it's as I say, it's more careful now,
yeah,
was that as long as you didn't get into trouble, they kind of let you do what you do, right?
yeah,
And so I love that playing with the sound, thinking about where your listeners are going to be. The thing about the toilet is brilliant. When we were on talk radio, we once played hide and seek with the listeners for an hour, right? And it was literally right. Kath's gone to hide. Where is she? And I was down in the showers because it was Talk Sport, of course.
yeah.
So of course they've got showers. They're all sport billies. So I was in the there was no one there at the time. It was late night. So I'm in the shower, and you
Yeah,
could just see the shower curtain rattling. Where are you? You in the kitchen? No.
yeah,
And then then the listeners were ringing up and they were sort of muffled voices, and it was, are you under the bed? No. Are you in the laundry basket? Yeah.
Yeah,
But it kind of it relied on an atmosphere of trust between us that
yeah,
nothing was going to go wrong. The listeners knew that we were having fun with them,
yeah.
not laughing at them. And it was just a laugh. Sorry, I just pulled my plug out.
Yeah.
I was so excited. We did that. We had a zombie invasion at one point.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things. It's like War of the Worlds where you turn it on, you didn't know that that was. Some
Yeah,
people thought it was real. I don't know if there was, but there must have been hospital cases of people having heart attacks over the fact that about the end of the world. But it is one of
yeah,
those things that radio teaches you that it's an immersive medium. So it's
yeah.
like you sort of it's with the Archers. Going back to the Archers, it's a good
Heavy breathers.
example
Yeah,
of they're on tour at the moment doing 75 years, and you can tell that it's and people don't care that they're not who what they thought they looked like. It's because they're immersed in that world. So when you hear the feedback program on Radio 4 and they're all moaning that they didn't understand why Jim Archer was had to host someone because of Cybercrime Week. And, and it's like because they were trying to raise awareness of cybercrime and someone
oh
had
yeah. They
like
do have the little campaigns, don't they, in the
yeah,
Archer?
and someone had listed Ambridge up for sale, but no one knew that these people were coming that booked into lodge because none of the houses were Airbnb'd.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things where without radio, you wouldn't get any of that. Yes, EastEnders, Coronation Street, Emmerdale, Neighbours, all and Crossroads all did this thing, and you're like, oh, that's brilliant. But the radio has a different
Yeah.
magic to it.
I am also wondering whether one of the beauties of radio is because now they're making TV
Yeah,
specifically for people who aren't watching it, who are on the phones,
yeah.
right? They're making non-concentrated, I don't know what, there's probably a technical term for it, but TV you don't have
Second
to concentrate
screen.
on.
I think it's called second screen.
Yes. So, I mean, radio is the ultimate that you can listen to it and, look at your TikToks at the same time.
Yeah,
Well, God
yeah.
knows
Because
what you're doing to it's mad.
I think I've
Um,
because
Go
I
on,
think I
sorry.
read somewhere that they say that they repeat the line twice. The first
Yes.
time is for the person watching. The second time is to give it more details to say, "Oh, this is what I'm doing currently," which is helpful for the visually impaired as well, because the
Yeah.
audio description is not always on the minute. It's like a second later or a second ahead.
Well, with radio news, I was always taught when you're writing the cues, you
Yeah,
tell them you've told them, and then you tell them again.
yeah, yeah,
So you get three
yeah,
hits. I guess, with radio news, especially on music radio, they're not listening for you.
yeah,
You've got to be there to fulfill the license agreement, but, they're not really listening for you. And so the art of it is to grab their attention while they can, while they're cutting someone's hair or underneath the car or trying to get the kids out of the shop without buying that chocolate bar or whatever it might be. They're all doing a million
yeah.
other things, and so it's about grabbing their attention. So that was the thing. You tell them once, tell them you've told them, tell them again.
Yeah, and before we move swiftly away from radio, one of
Yeah,
the things that you mentioned there about telling them multiple times, I think one of the interesting things is that, and this is really off track slightly, but when the Queen, this is my favourite story ever, but when the Queen died, and you sort of hear the news story, and then the
yeah.
BBC were repeating it just for people that are tuning in at any moment. The best one is because theatre was still on. And I heard someone in Australia mention this, but there was a London showing of Wicked, and I don't know how much you know about Wicked.
I know a lot about Wicked.
So the bloke walks on and says, "Tonight, we will regret to inform you that the Queen has passed away," and they said all that, and he went, "Just to let you know, we've not changed anything on the show." So the show starts off with, "Good news, she's dead."
No one mourns the
Yeah,
wicked.
and it's like, and so the people that hear about that are laughing, but the people in the audience, oh, they're really shocked because obviously they've just heard that the Queen's passed away, and now they're singing. It's like it's a little bit, but
Rejoicing Munchkins. Yep.
yeah, but moving away from or the Diddyman, moving away from radio ever so slightly before we get
Yeah.
sidetracked with the Diddyman. Um, one of the other things, as you mentioned, that you now do as you say, your proper job, which I don't think the word proper job ever exists because every job is a job. None of it's proper
I've had
unless you,
some jobs where I've thought, come on now, someone's going to knock on the door in a second and say, stop messing about.
yeah, the only proper job is if you're in property. That's a
Okay.
proper job. But
Good one.
but how did you end up falling in? And I know, not literally, my ad, but how did you end up falling into the world of
Yeah.
teaching? Because some people get in it different ways, and
Yeah.
some people fall into it by accident.
Do you remember when Twitter was good?
Yes.
Right. Back then, before it turned into a cesspit, fully cesspit. I mean, it was cessy areas, but it was pretty good, right? And you could have a chat with people, and I would, regularly hobnob with the great and good of comedy.
Yeah.
People with blue ticks would respond, and you'd have a laugh with them, right?
Yeah.
Um, and also you would get to know your audience that way as well. Now, I was always really careful with Twitter because I think because I'd come up through local radio, and when you're living in the community you serve, you've just got to be a bit careful about
Yeah.
making sure that you're not giving too much away. You don't want people knocking at your front door,
Yeah.
finding your kids, all that sort of stuff, because it only takes one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I was really careful, and I really did not give away too much personal stuff on there. But I got to a point after Talk Radio. We worked for Talk Radio for a long time, and I was working with Ian Lee. Now
Yeah.
Ian's contract didn't get renewed. They wanted me to stay on, but they would have had me producing. I mean, some of the names that they were suggesting, let's just say, were not exactly a laugh a minute, and
Yeah.
they weren't, reflective of the sort of peace and love hippie, slightly lefty, woke radio that I kind of liked.
Yeah.
It got quite shouty and argy bargy, and so I thought, seriously, am I going to be part of this engine?
Yeah.
And while I was in that moment, thankfully, Twitch came along
Oh
and
yeah.
offered
I love Twitch.
Ian, yeah, offered Ian a contract because at that point there wasn't YouTube live.
Yeah.
So what they wanted to do is get a load of sort of professional broadcasters on there
Mm.
and turn out something a kind of a cut above the sort of amateur stuff. And some of that amateur stuff is incredible, by the way. They taught us a lot while we were on there. There
Yeah.
was Captain Sexy, who used to do a cruise ship, right? Have you ever
Right.
seen Captain Sexy?
No, I just think that when you think of Twitch, I just think the first thing you think of is some person, mainly male, in the bedroom playing League of Legends. I just
Well,
don't.
exactly. Normally it's, racist 14-year-olds saying the N-word as much as they
Yeah.
can.
Well, now it's people washing. My favorite story. Now it's people washing up. There's an actor, Ben Rufus. I'm going to mention it
Wash it
now.
up.
Yeah, there's a man called Ben Rufus Green. His wife is Emily Brown. She's a producer and all this, and
Yeah,
she's an artist. He, who's appeared in sitcoms with Sue Johnston, Ashley Stories, and Timothy Spall.
yeah.
And so he is a very good actor. Now, what he does is he washes up on Twitch on a
I love
Sunday
that.
morning. His wife's rather annoyed because she wants to buy a dishwasher and he won't let her because it's
Oh
an
no.
income stream.
Lovely. I love that. Washing up. There's some really inventive stuff on
Yeah,
there. So there was him, there was Captain Sexy. Who else was on there? Oh, obviously Limmy.
yeah,
There were people on there really kind of making the most of that medium. So we got approached to do that. Ian brought me in. He said,
yeah.
Catherine, if I were to split this with you 50-50, could you afford to leave Talk Radio? I was like, yes, when can I start?
Yeah,
So that's how it started. So I left Talk Radio. They were very kind to me. They gave me
yeah,
time to think about it. It was obviously just a different direction that they were taking, and it
yeah,
wasn't really one I could go with. So thankfully, that coincided with this offer. So we ended up working for them for a year, and it was brilliant. And we tried all different sorts of things. We were green screening. We decided
yeah,
we put morph suits on for one, and the idea that was that we were going to be puppets of ourselves.
yeah,
But we hadn't really catered for the fact that it was really hot that
yeah.
day. And so we were in these morph suits, absolutely sweating cobs and
Oh,
wanting it to finish. I
brilliant.
think we managed about 12 minutes before we had to breathe.
Yeah,
But it gave us a chance to do that silly stuff, but also with a more visual thing. And actually, while we were at Talk Radio, we started out sort of experimenting before they went visual. Now it's Talk
yeah.
TV, isn't it? Um, we yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
used to use Periscope. Do you remember Periscope?
Oh, I do. I think I attempted to use it like once and I couldn't work out how to use it, so
Oh,
I just gave up.
it was so much fun. We built in this thing. We would Periscope our show,
Yeah,
and actually we had Talk Radio asking us how we did it technically, because how are you getting the sound? I can understand how you're getting the video, how are you getting the
yeah,
sound? And how we were getting the sound was this. We would take the headphones from the desk and put it over
oh,
the phone.
that is clever. That is clever because I remember Periscope being those people wonder. Well, all I remember of it because it was owned by Twitter, wasn't it?
Yeah,
All I remember it was just people walking. I mean, you can see that on Twitch now, but these
pods.
are they were no, they were just doing that, going, "Oh, I'm just walking to the shops," and they're
Yeah,
all American because you had to spend 4 years to try and find a British person.
exactly. So all these point of view things and wobbly shots.
Yeah,
So we were doing that, and we also incorporate it into our show. We would get the listeners to join us in a
Yeah.
certain person's stream. We would find someone nice who was talking to like three people,
Yeah.
and we would love bomb them, and all we'd go three, two, one, and everyone jump into their stream
Yeah.
and say lovely things to them and give them loads of hearts and stuff.
Ah.
And it would we made friends, and we'd end up with guests who were people that we'd found
Yeah.
on there, and we kind of carried that over to Twitch, and we would do the same thing. So we ended up with a nice little network of people like St. John, who's a gamer in America, and we kind of came across him because he was crafting with his wife at the time, and then we'd have someone else who
Yeah.
was, Captain Sexy, who was for no apparent reason in his pants against a green screen of the Love Boat. Um, we had a real collection of characters. It was great. So we
That
loved doing it. I
sounds
was like,
like
am I going with
something
this?
that Peter Kay would come up with. That doesn't
Oh
sound
yeah.
real.
Oh yeah. So this is going how I became a teacher. So we'd been doing that, and we've been using Twitch, and we came to the end of that. And then YouTube brought in YouTube video.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the guy who brought us in could got promoted because a great idea.
Yeah.
Next guy came in and said, right, well, there's no point doing this anymore because YouTube have done this,
Okay.
YouTube Live. So at that point, I was like, right, hell, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back to radio when the radio I make doesn't really exist
Yeah.
anymore?
Yeah.
And so I put a tweet out, and it was like the first personal tweet I've ever put out. We'd been to Liverpool for the weekend and had one of those lovely weekends where we'd done the Cavern and been on
Yeah.
the Magical Mystery Tour, which is, by the way, a brilliant tour.
Wow.
Have you been on it?
No, because I don't think I don't think I've ever been to Liverpool. I think the furthest I've ever been is Brighton.
I
Um.
was the same, right? Because I'm Mancunian, and we
Yeah.
have we have an innate sense of cynicism when it comes to Liverpool, and it's totally about football, right?
Yeah.
So I had never experienced it properly before. I went on a hen night and was surprised that one, it was really good fun, and two, the
Yeah.
people were really friendly. And so we'd been on this lovely sort of weekend to Liverpool, and it was
Yeah.
that post-holiday moment where you go, holiday to Liverpool, but post-break moment where you go, right, I've got to go back to real life now. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And so I put a tweet out, and I'd always joked, if all this fails, there's always teacher training. I'd always
Yeah.
joked about it because I did French and Spanish at university, and I was
Yeah.
always a SWAT.
Yeah.
And they're always asking for languages teachers because no one wants to do it. Well, because I don't think we value it in this
Yeah.
country. So,
Yeah.
um, so I was thinking of that, and I knew that you could get a grant to train.
Oh yeah.
So I put a tweet out, and it just so happened that one of our followers was a guy who works at the academy where I'm working now. And he
Oh.
said, do you know what? I think we can do better than that. There's a media teacher job going. Would you fancy coming in?
Yeah.
The week after, I was in front of 15, 17-year-olds doing a mini teach.
Yeah.
And yeah, got the job. So I started out as a trainee teacher. They fund It's this global academy in Hayes, which is an incredible place.
Mm.
It's a media specialist school.
Ooh.
You would have loved it.
Yeah.
We've got something like, trying to count them. We've got about 8 professional radio studios
Oh yeah.
because it's funded by partly funded by Global, the big that owns
Oh
Heart
yeah.
and Capital and all that.
Yeah.
Look it up, it's amazing. So we've got radio studios, but a TV studio. It's all free, and it's the sort of thing that you only normally get hold of when you go to university, like
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah.
So, but this is for 14 to 18-year-olds. It's an incredible place. Anyway, the advert over. So I go there, and they trained me up, so I'm a proper teacher. I ended up being head of journalism, which was great considering I
Yeah.
was the only journalism teacher.
Yeah.
So I'm in charge of myself. And then this year they've made me head of media. So
Wow.
it's 3 years. A lot has changed.
Yeah.
But it also turns out that working on radio and working in live radio in particular
Mm.
sets you up quite well for being a teacher because it's that kind of handling the unexpected and making complicated things simple.
Yeah. And and you mentioned Twitch before we go into my next point is, and what I love about Twitch is the fact that you can, and I don't know if this is just from my point of view or if this is you can just, if you've got a software that will allow it, you can just press record, press
Mhm.
start and do whatever.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, Ben Richard Green, one of the things that he does is I don't know if this is accurate, so if he is watching, I do apologize if it's not accurate. But I think his wife, Emily Brown, who I've also interviewed, I've interviewed both of them, and so
Once you get one, you always get the other.
yeah, well, she needed some help untangling things, And so the only way to get him to do it was to live stream on Twitch. And so they called it, I call it Untangling Club. It isn't what they called it. I just thought it was a better name than whatever they were coming up with. And it's them just coming up with different threads and whatnot, because she's a artist and
Yeah.
creative and whatnot. And she's very good at it, might I add. And it's an advert there. And so she just untangled these things. And you
What was
just
it?
sit.
Leads? Like you gone in the
No, it was like ribbon or wool or string. And
Okay.
you
Oh
did a
my
bot.
God, that's really fiddly.
Yeah, and so they both just sat there cross-legged trying to do this as
But you
we're
know
trying.
why people watch that?
Why?
Because it's the same reason we like playing Tetris. It's
Yeah.
solving, it's putting
Oh
things in
yeah,
order.
yeah,
It's what kids now call satisfying content.
yeah, and what was occurring was a chat, which was either and some other actors, some other people that had been coming from the other team. We all just tried to come up with how many gags we could come up with. We were just firing gags off,
Yeah.
at a
I
million
know the
miles per
Twitch
hour,
chat. The
and
Twitch
and
chat amuses itself.
yeah, yeah, and so it's one of those things, and then I started doing Twitch properly,
Mhm.
because I did the cliche of I played a game for 12 minutes. I've not played a video game since. It isn't Twitch's fault.
What game
Um,
was it?
it was something called Super Hot, where
Oh, I've
when
heard
you
of Super Hot. I know what that is. That's guns, isn't it?
yeah, it's when you move.
You're like a sort of crash test dummy looking
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, and you walk really slow, and you think, oh, I'm really good at this game, and then when you walk a bit faster, you realize you're really not very good at the game.
Yeah, it's tricky
But
that.
but it's one of those things that I think that Twitch gives people a platform to do whatever. So now on Twitch, I do live stand-up comedy from this very
Brilliant.
room. I record it on YouTube and whatnot beforehand, but I thought, well, I can do my work in progresses live.
Yeah.
Sometimes I did character comedy where I play my character Ruthless Knight, who's a clown character. And there's a point to this, but he's called Ruthless because his wife Ruth left him,
All
and his
right.
real
Yeah.
name's Nigel. So he's Ruthless Knight. Uh, and he wears a massive Mickey Mouse hat thing. Um,
Okay.
because I
Is
really
that
am.
related to her leaving him, or was that before or after?
No, no, he lives in a flat share with a bunch of other comedy characters that I've created. But it's one of those things where without Twitch, I wouldn't have just. Oh, well, I
Yeah.
was doing it on YouTube anyway, but it was one of those things where I thought, oh, I want to do a live stream and just press record and then did whatever. And I think that that's what's good about Twitch is that
Yeah.
because they're not strictly for gaming, even though that's their main aim, it's like,
Here's the thing. You know, we
yeah,
were talking earlier about how the people that get the breaks at the moment are people who've got big followings or
yeah,
people who've been on TV, you
yeah,
know, for however briefly. That is a thing. This is how you get around it. And
yeah,
actually, I do think there's a lot of people now, Nico and Milana, for
yeah,
example, who don't need television
yeah,
because they've managed to make social media and YouTube in his case, but
yeah,
make it work for them. And so now this is your opportunity to be able to, you don't have to get in front of a load of blokes in suits and convince them that your silly idea isn't quite so silly,
yeah,
even though you
yeah,
want it to be as silly as possible. You can just do it and you can make it and you can hone it and you can watch it again and you go, right, I didn't really like the way that turned out. Let's try it
yeah,
again. Like you say, you're work in progress.
yeah.
You don't have to go and stand in 15 pubs. You can do 15 nights and work it out. I mean, it's not quite the same thing. You can't
Yeah,
really feel
yeah,
the room the same.
but you understand what's going on. So because I'm learning in this area of comedy, I go, well,
Yeah,
some people walk on with this device. How do I make it an hour? Because
yeah.
I'm only good at doing this, and each time I do it, I'm a different version of
Yeah.
that. Because I'm going, I've watched this, that, and the other one. I need to try that out.
Exactly, because you know it sounds different when you say it than it sounded in your head. In your head,
Yeah,
it sounded like the funniest thing ever. When you actually say it, you go, do you know what? Actually, it could be a bit punchier or that doesn't quite work or
yeah,
whatever it is. But I
yeah,
think that's the beauty of what they call the democratization of media, right?
yeah,
The fact that you can just broadcast, you don't have to ask someone's permission or anything.
yeah,
Unfortunately, it leads to a lot of there's some really weird stuff out there. Some
yeah,
really weird stuff out
yeah,
there.
yeah.
When I was on Twitch, it was women in paddling pools. But and they were always dropping things.
I've got so many questions, but I just don't think we
Um,
want to go there.
but yeah, it's like you can just do it. Like when I was a kid,
Yeah,
my mum's got tapes of me and my sister doing KB
yeah,
radios. You know what I mean?
yeah.
We would give it to grandma, and grandma would say that's very nice, and it'd be lost forever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But this, unfortunately, that's the other thing. The internet is forever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
So your
mean,
baby pictures are up.
yeah, there is questionable things like I spent 4 hours trying to do one sketch and I've uploaded it 14 different times about an elephant because he said you said that you don't talk about the elephant in the room and I was imagining the elephant going oh don't talk about me. I have a Elmer elephant thing, but I didn't realize that elephant had tusks. So it took me 14 times until someone said, you know, that's the wrong elephant.
Oh, for God's sake.
And it was like 3 seconds. It wasn't even like a
You
proper
can't
hit.
take a joke down because of a pendant.
And then I thought, and then because I did it wrong, and then it's like, oh, and it's one of those things where you can just experiment. And so I had a comedy character, and then I thought, oh, I need to change the shirt. And
Yeah.
because you could just develop that. It doesn't matter if someone saw that, I thought, oh, I really like that, and then I change it a bit. You sort of like develop it. And do you think
You've
that?
got to be able to choose between what's useful criticism, what isn't, because
Yeah,
the world is primed at the moment
yeah.
for giving their opinion, whether you want it or not. So it's that. And I also think you've got to be careful because sometimes you can practice the funny out of something.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think the only problem I have with the online world is when you have abbreviations, because as we've already established, I'm 80 at heart. I don't understand abbreviations, and so you get sometimes the abbreviation isn't used too many times, and you eventually just suck it up and work it out yourself.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's some abbreviations that even when you try and piece together what it could mean, you're there 4 more years trying to work out, well, how does that letter fit into that word you're trying to make? And I do
Yeah.
think that's the only problem because some people, like I got a comment the other day, I deleted it because it confused me too much, where I didn't understand the abbreviation. And if I Googled it, it came up with like pasta you want to eat. I thought, that doesn't make any sense. And it was all just coming up with random shopping analogies. And I thought, that
Yeah,
can't be what
no, I
this
don't think that
person
could
meant.
be it.
But,
And the
oh,
often is, the suspicion is they're saying something quite rude.
yeah.
You can't get distracted by it. It's that balance of acknowledging the chat but not being a slave to the chat, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and because of the development rapidly within the internet with YouTube and Twitch and all these other platforms that are very similar,
Hmm.
there's that one that Simon Cowpart partly owns. There's a music one where you discover new artists, and
All
and
right.
and if you live stream your performance on there, it gets Simon Cowell gets some of the money. You don't get all the money, uh, but
Simon
I,
Cowell always wins,
but I
right?
think
Whatever he
there's a
sets
co
up.
but I think there's a recording contract somewhere. I think if you fact because he watches them every so often, I think he
Right.
takes out artists from it. But because of the development in a rapid sense, and when I was in college, which was not well, I've only just graduated uni, but when I was in college, the landscape of media has changed when I went to uni, and the moment I got into Salford, the BBC had like sold off and got rid of the CBC office from next door, and Blue Peter moved, and they had
Yeah.
to move all these things. Have you noticed as a teacher that the dramatic shift in the media is sort of you've had to quickly change the way you approach media because, for example, with the panorama issue over Donald Trump,
Yeah.
that next morning when that got moved on, we you had to say, well, the career of that job is going to change forever now. The way I do that job is going to be no
Yeah,
longer as
although
it
I
is.
wish people would stand up to Donald Trump. He uses what's known as lawfare, so he'll
Yeah,
frighten you into being quiet, and he doesn't actually have to do anything.
yes,
And I just wish some of the journalists, there are a few out there who are standing up to him, but they take too much nonsense from him
yeah,
generally, I think. The American, but I suppose it's that or he won't speak to you.
yeah,
What a shame that would be. Um, but yeah, because I'm training journalists, I am really, really digging in hard with the integrity thing
yeah,
because there are a lot of pressures on journalists at the moment to toe certain lines, not necessarily in this country, but certainly in America.
yeah,
Um, and I also think that with the rise of people, going on YouTube and calling themselves journalists, and then or YouTube or TikTok, whichever, it's not just particularly YouTube, but thinking that throwing allegedly on the end of something means that you shame people. I'm just trying to make sure that my students are one step ahead of that,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
But the real shame of it is I cannot tell them the way in that I got in is the way to go anymore
yeah,
because your local BBC station probably doesn't have a place for someone to be a skivvy for a bit or
yeah, yeah,
there aren't as many opportunities. But on the other side of things, as we've mentioned, you've got social media. Now, this is massive. There are
yeah,
loads of people on there. They're all clamoring for attention.
yeah,
But it is a good way to hone your skills and
yeah,
to behave as if you are in the public eye and you're creating a brand for yourself. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I think that there aren't as many media jobs for people who are older
yeah,
anymore. So for a kid starting out, it's very, very daunting. But I have to believe that there is a point um, to knowing your stuff, and I
yeah,
have to believe that the cream will rise to the top. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah, yeah,
we need different voices. We can't go back to the days of, oh, whose son are you? When can you start?
yeah,
Or can I just see that school tie?
yeah,
And I know there are some people who say, well, it's gone too far the other way, and it's a tick box situation. Mate, there was always a tick box.
yeah,
It just so happened that your characteristics ticked the box and you didn't
yeah,
notice it.
yeah. Good at
So,
the job. Can do.
yes. Did you go to Cambridge? Are you buddies with the
Yeah,
boss?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and that's the way it used to be. How
yeah,
on earth otherwise do you explain the number of, media, BBC families, for example, who
yeah,
all surprisingly had the same amount of talent? It helps, right?
yeah,
It helps.
yeah,
So I have to believe that different voices are still necessary. I
yeah,
know they are. They make life more interesting hearing different people's opinions, don't they?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but honestly, can I tell people that it's easy to get a career in media these days? No.
No, no. But I do think it's one of those things, and you mentioned how hard it is. It's with I know I've probably been a hypocrite here, but when people see those celebrity programs, they're like, who's that? Who's that? And I think that that sort of thing is a good thing if you don't know who that is because they're rising up.
Yeah.
It's like when you watch Celebrity Gogglebox and you're not too sure who such a body is, mainly because you recognise that person, but you've never heard of that one because it might be a son or a daughter or whoever that was available to
Yeah.
film it. Or in Stephen Mangan's case, it's either his sister, his twin, or just him in green screen because obviously, as he probably says himself, then his sister and Ethan Mangan looks exactly like him but just with red hair.
They are
And
quite funny though.
yeah.
I think it will open doors, but things like that, especially Gogglebox, it's very exposing. If you haven't got
Yeah.
it, then it becomes obvious, doesn't it?
Yeah, and before we move on, one of the things that I really love about Gogglebox there's an Australian version, and there's
Oh
an episode where the Goggleboxers, right, happened, and it might be a coincidence, were watching Celebrity Gogglebox, watching whatever, and they just watched that a second earlier. So we'd already seen the Goggleboxers' reaction to that program, but then they were reacting to the Celebrity Goggleboxers reacting to that program.
my God, it's like Inception.
Yeah, then at one point out of nowhere, the Goggleboxers were watching Celebrity Goggleboxers watching Gogglebox. And it's like,
Right,
where,
Gogglebox is eating itself at this
yeah,
point.
yeah, where else in the world could that happen? So it's like a really famous comedian that everyone really knows, like Ed Kavalee is an
Mhm.
example of a really well known. He did the Australian version of Harry Hill's TV Burp when it was called like it was just TV Burp was the
Yeah,
format, and so it's like Ed Kavalee watching a family from Melbourne watching Ed Kavalee, and it's like he's probably more conscious about himself at that point, and they're all laughing. Ah, ha, look
yeah,
at him, he's really funny. He's got a stupid opinion, realizing. Oh, I'm like that.
yeah. But we all do that in front of the telly, and
Yeah,
and we say things that we wouldn't want that person to hear because we're in
yeah,
the safety of our own homes, and we're not generally that mean, or.
yeah,
I do like the regular Gogglebox. I do think that's got.
yeah,
I mean, the Malones I love in particular, not just because Mrs. Malone shops in my cousin's Asda, but because I love the fact that they've always got a load of cakes on the
yeah,
table, haven't they?
yeah, and they never eat them apart from that. There was a dog once that ate it,
Yes.
but what I really like is I was doing one of the modules I was doing was script writing, and we were having some conversation with this woman, and I can't remember. I'm not gonna try and remember her last name because she's got two different names. She's got a professional name and a teacher name.
Same.
And she'd worked on Doctors, and it really freaked me out because I'd actually seen those episodes. I didn't realize she'd worked on them. So she's like using them as aids to explain script writing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know that episode exactly. And we were having a conversation about when you watch Gogglebox, there's programs on it that you wouldn't normally watch, but you would watch because you're
No.
curious enough about them because you like that sounds awful, but I'm curious to see what it is, and you wait until Gogglebox watch it. And
Yes.
and Clinton mentioned that as well. It's something that Clinton mentioned, and this is my point. So it showcases that there's enough TV out there for everyone, and and when you watch it on Gogglebox, you get more out of it. So it's like
I
that. I don't know who he's called. Brian,
know
I
what you
think he must
mean.
have been Brian, the paranormal fella. And Clinton absolutely loved him because he like was screaming or whatever, and he used that as a soundbite.
Yes, I agree. And I also think it's kind of we because we're getting everything delivered to us now and it's
Yeah,
all, TikTok knows what you like because it knows what you linger on. So you get more of that
yeah,
stuff. And the same goes for YouTube. So you can get very easily into a channel where you're only a channel, I mean, like of your own, where you're
Yeah,
only watching things you already know you like, right? So
yeah,
you're not going to end up with a Tom Mason who knows about Some Mothers Do Have Them and Terry Wogan, because you end up with kids like a lot of the ones that sit in front of me that say, "Oh, it's before my time." It's like, well, yeah, Jesus was before your time. Presumably, you've heard of him. But it's that kind of
good
thing,
point.
and there is so much stuff. I've got the Beatles here; they
Yeah,
were before my time, but it's I love music, and so
yeah,
I love exploring it, and this is the great thing about things like Gogglebox, or listening to the radio, listening to music
yeah,
radio when they're playing you things that aren't necessarily trending now. Is you go, oh my God, I really like that. I'm going to listen to
yeah,
more of that, and that curiosity is there
yeah,
rather than expecting it to be delivered to you straight away.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I think Gogglebox is great for that, because who sits down and watches TV from the moment they get home? Some people do. But it used to be that I'd get home from school, the
Yeah,
box would be on, and it'd be on till tea time, and you would watch what was on. You
yeah,
wouldn't be flicking around because there wasn't that much there.
yeah,
But no one does that anymore, so you don't find things by accident so easily.
yeah. Well, I do think, and what's really interesting, and we will move swiftly on, is that when you're,
Too late. It's been an hour, hasn't it?
I don't know, we'll find that out later. But you get you get this, you get when you get adverts for TV shows, and you're, oh, that looks interesting. For me, because of the way that the internet works, you not necessarily. Sometimes the adverts like, you might like this. We're just going to
Hmm.
test the water. And I found that I was really into like deaf programs from the BSLs. I didn't know this until
Death programs or
deaf,
deaf programs.
deaf with an F. I'll come on to that in a minute. But Ben Rufus Green, who I've mentioned a few times, he used to work with the BSL Zone because
Okay.
I think if I remember rightly, he was like hiring translators or whatever.
Okay.
And because he was an actor, he was on these things. The Gemma Arrowsmith, who's appeared in a lot of things, she was also working on these things. And I've, because of him, I discovered, this really good deaf sitcom that's got Sophie Strong in it, who was in Casualty, Chelsea Detective, and Two Doors Down. Oh,
Okay.
and then you watch it and go, oh, it's like if Friends was deaf, and it was quite funny. Then you find a deaf sketch show, and you think that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. Where there's a sketch where some memory screens,
How do they do tone of voice? I mean,
it,
because a lot of comedy isn't necessarily what you've written, it's the way it's delivered. How do they
well,
do that?
it's gestures, it's the way that they move. So every so often you'll have hearing people dotted about, or you'll have different types of deaf people, so that when you're watching it, it's performed in
Okay.
slightly different ways. So the deaf funny, the way that this sketch show works is that you've got your deaf characters, right, at different levels of deafness. You've got your interpreters that are there, and you've got your hearing cast. And they're
Okay.
the butt of the joke. So this one is, this woman walks into the bar and she says, "Have you ever kissed a deaf person?" She writes it down on her phone. She hands it to Ben Murphy Green. He looks at it. He runs off. And then the camera pans to it. "Have you ever kissed a death as in dead person?" And it's like, that is an excellent joke.
Yes.
Or then you have Gemma Arrowsmith being the Prime Minister, and you have an interpreter that's interpreting absolute nonsense. And all the deaf people are like, what?
Yeah, what on earth is he on about?
Yeah, what's going on? And I do think that it showcases, because that's what the internet does really well, is I wouldn't have ever noticed, I wouldn't have ever decided before to watch a deaf panel show, and I wouldn't have ever thought, oh, that's really funny. It's like, whose line is it anyway? Would I lie to you type thing. And I wouldn't have ever thought of watching it without the internet. And if you notice that that's a positive about the internet, because it's broadened your horizon, because I wouldn't have been into
Yeah.
what is known as, what I call deaf comedy, but really is, it's
Well,
just
it's just comedy,
comedy.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a panel show, and it's a sitcom. It's just the fact that it's been marketed in a certain way, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and I do think that's a step forward for the industry, because there's more like variety, because if you get a genre that people like, they'll watch it regardless. So I
Mm.
watch Scottish Gaelic sketch shows because I'm curious to why they made Donald Trump have a brother from Scotland, where that Donald Trump speaks Gaelic to his brother. Um,
Donald Trump's mum was Scottish, wasn't she?
I didn't know that, but he
Yes.
but it's the same bloke, they're like twins, but he's on the Isle of Harris and Donald Trump's in the White House speaking Gaelic. But I wouldn't have thought that because of the genre. And do you think that that's what the industry needs to delve into? it needs
I
to
think it's
showcase that there's a variety out there, not just the norm.
yeah. I think that it's happening. So industry needs to find a way to make it work for itself or get left behind. And
Yeah,
so some of these BBC is a very cumbersome beast and it takes quite a
yeah,
long time for it to move into gear. But I've no doubt that it will find its space and start owning it properly because the alternative is it carries on without it.
yeah,
And that would be a shame, for all its flaws, I think, and that's probably because I kind of grew up within the BBC,
yeah,
from being a 20 something to, I had my kids and everything. I was working for the BBC.
yeah,
So I maybe there's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome there, but I do think it's a worthwhile thing to have. Otherwise, who's in control of the media? It's the same two guys, right?
yeah. And I think that having like places like Channel 4 where they'll do branch out to weird and wonderful things, or as I've said, the Deaf Channel, the area on Film 4 late at night or early in the morning, depending on what time you're up.
Yeah.
Because
But they
that's
need to
where,
be able to afford to do that and for it to take a punt on things
yeah.
that aren't necessarily going to be massive hits straight away.
Yeah, yeah, and the last leg, which is one of those things that I think represents that there's more out there. They showcase what the Death Olympics was to millions, because the Death Olympics quite recently was 100 years old, and
Mhm.
without them saying that, I don't think the mass would know that there's
Yeah.
an Olympics for just deaf people.
Mhm.
Where you have you have the 100 line swim, but there's no audience the audience is cheering, but no one can hear what's
Mhm.
going on, and it's like fascinating because you want to learn about that. And do you think that that's what TV does really well? Is that it educates, but it's now educating on another level than it was when it was like air and play school.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point. I mean, the Rethian ideal that you educate, inform, and entertain
Yeah,
still holds true. We all want
yeah,
to leave a program or a film. I saw the Odyssey, by the way, the other day. It's really
yeah,
long, but it's great.
yeah,
You want to leave it feeling a little bit cleverer, don't you?
yeah,
Or having a little nugget in your back pocket to be able to produce next time conversation gets a bit
yeah,
slow. I feel like I need to get something out of the time that I invest
yeah,
in that. So yeah, I think definitely. I think
yeah.
definitely.
And do you think that as a educator in the media space, do you think that that sort of teaches you as a person that says there's other ways of trying to get the message across because you're
Yeah.
trying to teach them this is how you do it, but then if that doesn't work, there is other avenues to say
Oh,
tell
for
that story,
sure.
but just swap those words around so that you can get the most important bit out first because that person might have tuned out seconds
Yes,
later.
for sure. And also just being aware that that there's not just one way to
Yeah,
deliver a story. There's not just one way to tell a story. And actually, what part of my job is same as it was when I was a producer. I listen to the person that's in front of me, the
yeah,
presenter, and work out what they're really good at and what they're really into and
mm,
what lights them up. And I tell them, do more of that.
yeah,
I'll say to them, do you realize that you're the first person who's maybe interested in that thing or
yeah,
whatever it might be? And part of it is encouraging that person to stop trying to imitate what they think is good
yeah,
and try to kind of embrace what is essentially themselves and then sort of just put polish on it because for example going back to Terry Wogan, one of the greatest broadcasters of my lifetime
yeah,
certainly, and taught me that lesson of just speak to the one listener, make them feel like you're just talking to them, right?
yeah,
When I first started presenting, they suggested I put a photo of my best mate on the microphone so I was talking to them because
yeah,
you don't do that thing that is always a very tempting thing of good morning everybody. It's not
yeah,
good morning miss. It's
yeah,
it's not that you're with one person. You're probably sitting in the car next to them or they're making breakfast or they might be sitting in hospital or they
yeah,
might so it's just you and them. Terry Wogan was great at that.
yeah.
I can't be Terry Wogan. It will be weird.
He
But what I
would
can
be.
do
He would be, but that bloke is. So,
yeah, but what I can do is take the essence of what that magic was
yeah,
and try and bring it in.
yeah,
And that's what I try and get the kids to do. Not to imitate, not to do it all one way. I don't
yeah,
know exactly the way. I know what's the legal thing that you need to do
yeah,
or what's the technical thing that you need to get across. But how they do it, I really want it to be them.
yeah,
And a lot of that floats on confidence.
yeah. So, as we draw this interview to a close, two things I'd like to mention is that I obviously I've never done a solo radio-based course, so I
Mhm.
don't know. And what I'm saying might be widely wrong, but from what I can gather, no one ever teaches anyone the best way to do the shipping forecast. That's one thing that radio courses need to do. It's we did radio
Have you ever
studio.
had to go though?
Well, I'd love to. I thought to myself once, I was listening to an excellent Radio 4 documentary where this woman had met people who were in those places that the ship
Yes,
podcast
who listen
going.
up for their place, yeah.
And it's like postcards or whatever. And then Reverend Richard Cole did the more full thing where he drove along. So he played an episode of the shipping forecast
Yeah.
episode. He played an issue of the shipping forecast, then went on the journey of that shipping
Yeah.
forecast. And I adore the shipping forecast for many reasons. But I did once try to
I
make a
think it's
Doctor Who version.
ASMR, don't you?
Well, I just like the idea of a bloke. He's up late at night going, and now we've got the other ships coming through.
South at Tira.
Yeah, yeah,
20.
and they made a gag about it on Two Doors Down on the sitcom where they roll up really late, and the neighbours have just all come round for a sausage sandwich, and none of them could sleep. And so they turn the radio on, and they're all listening to shipping
Chicken
forecast.
pocket.
I'll throw it in after. But I tried once to make a Doctor Who version where I tried to. I thought,
Oh,
and then I realised it was too much effort. I tried to look on Google for a script in the shipping forecast so I could just alter the words,
yeah.
and then it just took too much time. I,
See, you'll have to do what we used to do as
yeah,
kids when we wanted the lyrics to a song and we couldn't Google them, is tape it
yeah,
and then press pause at the end of every line and write it down.
yeah. Uh, uh, uh,
Old-fashioned way, but it made us more determined, Tom.
yeah. And then the final thing is, if anyone wants, because this is relevant to the conversation, if anyone wants,
If you've managed to stick it out for this long.
yeah, if anyone wanted to answer in a pub quiz when ITV was born. Well, if you Google when Dixon and Doc Green was invented, 1955, then you know the answer to ITV because they came out at the
Oh,
same time. Probably not the exact same moment, but they were in the same year. And so that's a very handy pub quiz fact for anyone and very relevant to the conversation. So, so as we draw out this interview down the alleyway of clothes, without giving away your home address, where
yeah.
can people track you down online?
Google.
There you go. Uh,
And it's Katherine with a K, Boyle. But I'm mostly on Clinton these days.
yeah,
I'm a shy retiring type of person. Oh no, I also do a show with the very shy retiring Ian Lee, and we do that every Friday behind a paywall. But there is 20 minutes free at the start of every show. So if you want to just have a little taste of it, so that's normally 9 o'clock Fridays,
yeah,
and you'll find us. But Google it.
yeah, yeah. And if you want to pay, definitely pay. Or else, in Clinton's word, I'm trying to think of the exact same phrase, but in Clinton's word,
Cheapskates.
cheapskate. That's the one. Yeah. Otherwise, you're a cheapskate.
Although Clinton's, if you are hard up and it's a trying time with the cos he lives and everything at the
Yeah,
moment, you can just be a bit behind, but it'll be old news by the time you hear it. I think it's like 4 week delay or something.
yeah. It's like someone getting out of a bunker and finding out an important piece of information from the news,
Well,
and then
that's how I listen to it. And I think, oh, flipping it. Yeah, that was ages ago. I remember
yeah,
I was worried about that. And now it's complete ancient history.
yeah, yeah. Like someone finding out the wolves and they've been in the bunker for 3 months. Um, but on that note, we shall
Yes.
leave it there. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, no, I've forgotten.